Hello and good evening. This is Jet, and you're listening to
Metal Magdalene.
Welcome to the show, everyone. We have today's guest with us. We have Jamie Bailey, founder and bassist and vocalist for the brutal death metal band Brodequin. Welcome to the show, Jamie.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here, even though I am a couple minutes late. I apologize.
better late than never.
Right.
So, Jamie, your band started out and still consists of you and your brother, along with others. But when did you go from just jamming together to deciding to forming a band? And were you like a brutal death metal band right from the beginning?
I don't. It's a toughie. We grew up, obviously, together, being my brothers. We moved around the country quite a bit due to our dad's occupation. And a lot of the times, we were kind of like our own, best friends. We didn't really have a lot of friends. When you're a new kid in town all the time, kind of happens that way. So when we started playing music, it naturally was we were playing together. Now, in the beginning, Mike may have, flirted around with a little band here or there that I wasn't part of, and vice versa. But it became apparent pretty quick that the best way to kind of accomplish what we were looking for was just to do this together. And when we first started out, you're always looking at who's around you, the resources you have. And there's still not a whole lot of brutal death metal musicians in the Knoxville, Tennessee area. So when we first started, it was probably more akin to like a thrashy type of band or something like that, because that's who we had to choose from. Then eventually, when the network kind of expanded a little bit, we were able to come across some people that had interest in death metal, and it kind of rolled from there.
So, Jamie, tell us what a Brodequin is.
So, for those of us that have the Instruments of Torture CD, it's the artwork and the inside tray card. We used the artwork on the back of the Instruments of Torture shirt for a while. Basically, if you will, think of kind of like a box that's going to go around your legs. So your legs will be fully encased in this box. Your legs will be separated by a couple of boards in between your left and right leg. Then they would take wedges and drive them in between these boards. So you have, immense pressure from all sides on the bone, which of course results in the bone shattering. It's technically not considered an execution technique. It's a torture technique. However, when you think about when these things are being utilized and in the rates of infection and things like that, no antibiotics, it often would be a fatal endeavor to be part of this.
So let's tell everybody you have a degree in history. So would it be safe to assume your degree was like in medieval history?
So I've always been a huge fan of history. Mm-hmm. And, you know how it is when you're in university, you always have to take electives and blah, 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 blah. Right. So I've done lots of different history, but, I focus on the Middle Ages. I also focus on a lot of different areas of the world and the history. American Civil War, you name it, World War I, World War II, Revolutionary War in the United States. But the medieval era always just was really something that drew me in for whatever reason. And this type of material, when you're talking about Middle Ages, usually is pretty glossed over, because we'll talk about, religious movements or maybe the Black Death, things like that. But a lot of this stuff was kind of wrapped in mystery. And so it just kind of drew me in. And it's hard to find a lot of information on it. Still is. I mean, even though it's, we've got the internet and all that and, the endless streams of info out there. But it's still kind of one of those topics that there's not a lot of information. But once you dig into it, what I mean by that is once you dig into it, you'll find you're reading a lot of the same stuff, which is okay. It's just interesting that we don't talk a lot about it.
So tell us how you kind of incorporated the history that you learned into your music. I mean, listening to your music is like a musical history lesson in medieval torture, Jamie.
Well, yeah. I mean, that was kind of one of the thought processes. When you're first starting out, there's a zillion bands out there, right? And there's a zillion fantastic bands out there. So we kind of were thinking, well, how in the world are we going to differentiate ourselves from everybody else that's doing pretty much, similar things? And in the past, there had been bands that, have talked about, maybe some kind of, maybe the Witch Trials or something like that. Or, of course, Iron Maiden, right? I mean, their name is Iron Maiden. So you've got people that were kind of flirting with this idea, but no one ever took a real deep dive into it, kind of like we did. And I thought, well, this will give us a chance to separate ourselves with the imagery, the subject matter, and being I'm kind of a history nerd, maybe I can share some of this kind of what I think is cool history along the way, and some of the pieces of artwork that were extremely regional during the time. And you're talking about woodcuts and things like that. For example, the cover of the Instruments of Torture album was a woodcut that they believe comes from somewhere in Germany. So unless you were there at that time, you wouldn't have seen that piece of artwork. By us using it, it kind of gets it out there to more people than the artist probably could have ever imagined would be seeing their pieces of art. So that was part of it too. The art, the matter, all of it.
Well, it's kind of cool too. Like I said, it's like a musical history lesson there when you
right
between the music, what you're singing about, and the visuals. It's just kind of cool. And you guys got your own thing going on so far that nobody else is doing. So you guys kind of stopped due to some family tragedies. But Jamie, what was the band doing kind of prior to that time? And like, what were some of the shows you were playing and tours and stuff like that?
So there were, lots of opportunities we had. We were fortunate enough to go over back, sort of in like Methods of Execution days, and do Obscene Extreme. We did, Fuck the Commerce in Germany, all kinds of goodies that, we never thought we'd be able to do that. We thought, okay, well, we're just going to have this band and it's going to be fun and we'll release some hopefully pretty cool stuff. But never really ever thought that we'd have the opportunity to, even play some of the fantastic festivals here, like whether it be Metal and Death Fest or whatnot, and let alone go overseas and do that. So, we did a couple little mini tours back in the day with Vomit Remnants, little stuff like that. But really, due to job constraints and things like that, festivals have been our best friends.
Mm-hmm. And now your last full length was Methods of Execution out in 2004. Jamie, what was it that kind of spawned your comeback to the scene and ultimately writing this new album?
Well, we knew at some point we were going to get back involved in it. But with what you had mentioned earlier, we didn't really have a timeline on that. Everything was being processed and thought differently. Then we went through, okay, well, we've got to get the lineup complete. We got to figure out what we're doing with that. And that posed some challenges. So along the way, probably, the last 7 or 8 years, we had actively been seriously writing. Now, in the past, we were kind of, a riff would come here or there and we'd talk about it, maybe how we might want to use it. But then we started actually putting things together. Once we started putting things together, it was just like really the old days and just like dropping dominoes. At one after the other, the riffs were falling, things were going right into place, and it came together rather quickly. Really just kind of came down to personnel.
So the name of the album is Harbinger of Woe. So Jamie, tell us a little bit about this album and some of its lyrical themes or torture history.
So we still have a lot of the same, subject matter, of course, dealing with Middle Ages. I delved into some deeper stuff, which we've done in the past. We had songs like Torches of Nero or Bronze Bowl, which went back to Greek and Roman times. And we did that this time with a song called Suffocation and Ash that goes pretty deep, back to, 5th century type thing. But a lot of the similar stuff, the kind of things that have changed a little bit, where in the past I might just tell you basically black and white what the specific torture was about, like, spinning in agony or something. It might just be kind of a step-by-step walking you through what happens to the victim. This time around, it was a little bit different. I kind of played a little bit with trying to get a little bit more into the emotion of what the person or crowd or even executioner may be experiencing during this, and kind of played into the album title itself and the album cover, that we selected. Kind of this whole feeling of almost hopelessness and suffering.
And tell us a little bit about the album and like approaching it musically from a musical point of view.
So Mike does a tremendous amount on the music side. Mm-hmm. I'll come to him. I also play guitar, but like I've said in the past, I'm a pretty dirty guitar player. It's just not very clean what I do. So I'll have these really rough ballpark ideas. I'll say, hey, what do you think about this? And when I approach him with it, or I record it and send it to him, or however we do it, he's always able to take that and mold it into something that's actually usable and really good. where I'm thinking of going, he's able to take it even 5-10 steps further than that. So even though he's the major writer of riffs, there's contributions coming in from myself that help things go along the way. But Mike is kind of the master crafter here with the music.
And talking a little bit more about the cover art that you touched on a little bit. So you had an artist help you with this, and you threw in some of your things. But what do these artists think when you're like telling them what you want on there?
So it's actually interesting because this is one where this is a fairly, I say, famous piece, in the world of art, but you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's one of those things, if you're into it, you're into it. Otherwise, who knows? I mean, the Mona Lisa means nothing to plenty of people, right? Cool. So this is one of those things where the artist Jose de Brito is a Portuguese guy. He actually passed away like in 1946, if I'm not mistaken, or 48, one of the two. I stumbled across this piece of artwork in one of my millions of books, it seems, I have around here, and thought, wow, this is kind of really capturing what I'm going for on this record. I wonder if there's any way we could possibly use it, because things are different when you're on when you're doing things on a low level as far as an underground label goes. People probably aren't going to catch the artwork. They're probably not going to have a problem with it if you're using something improperly, so to speak, without the proper rights. Things were a little bit different now with Season because it was going to reach a lot more people. So I was absolutely shocked and thrilled that we got permission from the Museum of Contemporary Art in Lisbon, Portugal, that houses this piece. So that was shocking to me. I couldn't think of anyone off the top of my head that has gotten that kind of permission to use a piece of art like this. So I was thrilled. We were able to go with it. All I did to it were very minor edits just to make it look a little more dirty and rough around the edges. But that's it. I mean, as far as the art goes itself, he kind of captured where I felt we were kind of going with this.
Well, that's kind of a cool historical thing right there.
Yeah, it's very cool. Yeah. And again, where it's all just so weird to me to think that, I never would have thought in my wildest dreams that, a history, I'm sorry, a museum of art is going to someday give you permission to use a piece that they have. Yeah. That's great. It's crazy to me.
You would think that they would be like so proper and be like, no, that's awesome.
Right. Yeah. I mean, all I can figure is what it comes down to is they absolutely researched the things we had used in the past. Mm-hmm. No way they're just going to give you a blanket. Yeah, go ahead. Right. And they must have felt, hey, these guys aren't, we're not exploiting it in any way. No. We're treating it respectfully. And so I think that was a big factor in why they were like, yeah, go ahead.
And, Jamie, I wanted to mention to the audience, too, that on your Facebook page, you have like these little, this time period things, little snippets, today in history type of thing.
Yeah, right.
Now, weren't you going to do some kind of like YouTube thing? You were going to run
I'm kicking it around, to try and do that. And one of the challenges is trying to figure out, how long of this information is too long, right? Do you just do like a reel type of thing where you're talking about like a minute, a minute and a half, a real quick, high-level description? Or do you dig into something that, becomes more like 30 minutes? I don't know where I'm at yet with that on attention span for the audience, I mean, you would know that better than anyone.
Well, I was scrolling just the other day. I was scrolling just to read all these things on your page because they're all interesting, and even the way you word it, Jamie, it's interesting to read. It's not like trying to read a boring history thing, it's kind of fun.
And that, there's a lot of truth in that statement as far as like the interpretation of people's experience with history, right? So most of us remember our history classes as being very much this boring, oh my God, I've got history class, third period or whatever. I don't even want to go in there. And I get it. I had a lot of those classes too. The trick with history, I think, or anything really to kind of keep people into it is you have to make it fun. You have to make it interesting. If it's all just, just a wall of text that no one can possibly relate to, yeah, you're going to lose everyone.
And Jamie, if people want to learn more about the band, keep up to dates on shows, where to pick up the album, where to read some of these historical lessons, what are some of the best sites for them to go to?
Let's see. There are many of the sites that I've gone to have been run a lot like people like myself, that are just interested. And so really the best thing I would suggest is going to Google and type in, like, history of torture, history of Middle Ages torture, yada, yada, yada. And you'll come across a wealth of knowledge there. And that's kind of changing. And then books are hit or miss, to be honest with you. In the past, I have recommended books to people thinking that they were very much interested in the topic at hand. And what ended up happening is they really weren't interested in the topic. They just kind of wanted to get the images, for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. So there's a book I defaulted to. Now, it is a good book. It's a huge book, and there's not a lot of useful illustrations in there. So if you're interested in the topic, there's a book called Framing the Early Middle Ages. Let's see, who was that by? I can't remember who that was by. Chris Wickham, I think, wrote that book. Mm-hmm. It's a huge book. It's like 800 pages or something like that, but it'll dig in. And of course, I would recommend, anyone can feel free to get in touch with me in Facebook. I'm just Jamie Bailey on Facebook. You'll see me right there. Brodequinofficial.com will also get you our email address. And for those that are actually interested, I'd be thrilled to help them out. Seasonofmist.com will have all the album information and pre-ordering information for all the merchandise.
So there you guys go. Brodequin have a new album coming out March 22nd called Harbinger of Woe, off of Season of Mist Records. And Jamie, thank you for coming to the show to talk a little bit about the band and the new album, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I'm glad you enjoyed it.